grandmother a poem about a year after she had passed, which was June 16th of this year. She passed June 16th of 2018. She had Alzheimer's and dementia for 8.5 years. I wrote this poem a year after that she had passed, so I titled the poem 8.5 Years to One. This is it. 8.5 years. 8.5 years that you lived in confusion. 8.5 years you lived in fear. 8.5 years you lived in worry. And 8.5 years you struggled with day-to-day activities. 8.5 years you were lost. 8.5 years you were stuck in a mental prison and you spent your whole life raising me. 8.5 years the tables were turned though. And for 8.5 years you didn't know your one and only son. For 8.5 years though you fought. And now it's been one. Unsure if I would actually make it this far. Dark thoughts definitely filled my head. Shut the voices out. 1 year, my family and friends took care of me. 1 year, coping, accepting, understanding, and gratitude were things I struggled with. 1 year though, and I'm as happy as can be now. 1 year has allowed me to adapt. 1 year, and I've progressed more than I ever thought I could. 1 year, I'm in the best shape of my life. 1 year, I'm beginning my new career now. 1 year, I've grown closer with my family and friends. 1 year of strength and persistence to keep going. In 1 year, you would be so proud of who I am today. 8.5 years to one. The battle is over and you won. I love you, Bryant Surrey.
Very good.
Hello everyone, my name is Marc Surrey and I am a drummer, as many of you know, and I drum for Forming Stories and Wrath Upon Eden. The first album that really got me was Americana by Offspring. I was in about 7th grade and my mom had rented out Black Mountain BMX, the bike track, for all my friends to ride, like just to ourselves, and one of my friends got me Americana and it was the first CD I ever had. And then I suddenly got into a band called Sugar Cult, which I do not like now, but their drummer was the first one to get me into wanting to play drums. So how did Forming Stories form? That's always a good question. So Aaron and I went to the same high school together, but we never hung out or talked. Our mutual friend, Chris Lively, had his bass amp and bass guitar at my house with my drum set. And one day Chris said, can my friend Aaron come over? He has a guitar. And I said, sure. Literally the first time that Aaron and I have probably ever spoken to each other outside of school. Like never hung out at school. He brought his guitar over and we started jamming and we formed a band called Epilepsy. And it was about 16 years ago, maybe even 17 now because we're old. But Aaron and I have stuck together ever since. We split paths, started a 2-piece called A Mediocre Massacre, and then we decided, hey, all we're doing is Forming Stories, so we changed our name to Forming Stories. Biggest highlights I think so far between us is the fact that we were on a video game, 2 of our songs, and I love video games. MX vs. ATV, All Out, that was the game that we were on. In Flagstaff, and it was awesome. We've obviously shared the stage with many great bands, but those are the big highlights I think that I can think of right now. And then you guys probably also know that I had a wonderful opportunity to fill in for Vinny Espinoza, drummer of Wrath Upon Eden at the time, and I pretty much filled in for them all of 2018, aside from like one show in the beginning of the year. Had a blast. It was way more than just playing music with them. It was getting another family and being accepted into another one. It was awesome. And they enjoyed me enough, I guess, to where they asked me to fill in. And as you guys know now, I fill in for Wrath. Big highlights already. Halloween show, we turned into Wrestling Upon Eden, which was dope because we all love wrestling. I got to dress as one of my favorite wrestlers, Finn Balor. We've played with Insomnium before. We have opened, like, I have played with bands I never thought I would ever share a stage with or even just be on the same bill with. And plenty of people like what I'm able to do with Wrath, so I enjoy it. I'm going to stick around as long as they can tolerate me. So I would think my depression started about 5 years ago now. My mom had Alzheimer's and dementia for about 8.5 years, and I would say about 3.5, 4 years into it, we had her admitted to Scottsdale Thompson Peak because her heart was operating at about 11%, they said. And I was there with her for as long as I needed to be, days, but the nurse came in and had said that we need to speak with who's in charge of her and like what's gonna happen because we think you should sign a DNR for her. And I obviously didn't want to, but they said with her Alzheimer's and dementia being so bad and progressing so much, if they tried any type of surgery or tried any type of anesthetic, that it would make her freak out, like her heart just overreact and basically like explode. There was nothing they could do, and all I could do was just watch her in bed, just weak as I've ever seen in my life, and I had to face that decision of signing the DNR. I immediately called my aunts because I have no family here. I have a family of 5 people, and they're on the East Coast, so very small. But my aunts told me like, do what you need to do, and I agreed to it. And my mom made it. Like she did not give up. But I think at that point it got really hard for me because from then on out, she never fully recovered to her state prior to her heart like breaking down like that. Never. She at that point she couldn't remember my name. Anytime we hung out, we'd be hanging out having a conversation, and she would just ask, "Where's my son Mark?" And that was tough. It was very, very tough. And she just never knew who I was at this point. Like she was totally clueless. She knew I existed, but she didn't know who I personally was. So that's when it started, and then I got pretty selfish because I knew just her seeing me, like it brightened up her day because she knew I had some importance to her, but she did not know I was her son. So I kept letting it get to me, and I was drinking a lot. I was calling out of work a lot. I was just being completely lazy. I wasn't doing anything to try and get myself out of it, and I just turned into a mess, like a big mess. Sometimes I would even say I'm gonna go visit her, and I wouldn't even go because I could not deal with the fact that my own mother had no idea who I was talking to me. So that's when I think everything started. Yeah, it did get worse over time. And I go back to me being selfish because she had no control over what was happening to her. But that disease really kicked her ass the next couple of years. And she eventually got to the point to where she was so weak I couldn't even take her out to eat anymore. So I'd have to take food to her house or just cook something and bring it over. But while she had no control, she was still as happy as can be when I was there. And on the flip side, I was drinking more. I was just being a lazy asshole to myself, basically. And I was just being selfish in the fact that I had a chance to control what I was doing. And I never took into consideration that even though she's living and breathing every single day, she has no control over her own mind. And that's a scary thought. And then just continually just watching her just slowly and slowly get worse and worse. So that made me feel worse and worse, but I realize now I should have just stayed as strong as possible. But I think even the fact that my family was always available on the phone, I always had friends here, but I never had family here. Like they visited as often as I could, but even with friends, like I still felt very alone because I had no Surreys, um, just available to speak with, and family's family. Like you can't get stronger than that. So that made it a little hard for me. At first, I wasn't really talking to anyone about it, so I let a lot build up inside of me, even though a lot of my friends knew what was going on. And I think just a combination of all that, just like it really just, like I made it worse, basically. At first, yeah, I definitely kept it to myself because I hated feeling vulnerable and talking with friends about it. At the time, it just made me feel worse every time. So I really avoided talking to anyone about it. I just didn't want to. I have a lot of dark thoughts. I honestly thought like I was just so sad all the time and just so upset by it, and I was not accepting of the fact that she has these diseases. There's nothing that can be done, and like there was a brief moment in time where I thought if I clocked out per se, um, that would make me feel better, and I wanted to hurt myself. I have no idea why, but I I blamed myself a lot, and just a lot of poor self reflection on myself. Like I was not taking care of myself, and yeah, I always had negative thoughts about myself. I kept putting me as the problem. Love. That's the first thing that all of them showed. Every single one of my friends was there for me. They talked to me. They would let me talk and just listen. We would listen to music. We would do anything that they knew I wanted to do to get my mind off it. My family was as supportive as they could have been. They understood, but, and I didn't understand this at the time, but they knew that I needed to get myself out of this state because it wasn't making it any better. So they were a little hard on me to, get me in the right direction and gear me on a different path. But they only had support. They let me vent. I had some friends I hadn't talked to in years that would speak to me if I reached out, calling them sometimes midnight, 1 in the morning, just because I could not do it. And all they did was let me vent, and it made me feel really good. And sometimes they would ask, "Hey, would you like me to respond, or do you just want me to listen?" And I think that just really helped with everything. I'm doing great now. I started writing a lot of poems and just weird little like excerpts of things that were just on my mind. Really invested a lot of time into music, not just playing it, but just evolving my musical taste. Playing was obviously one of the biggest things for me because I could beat the shit out of something and have fun doing it. And drums was perfect for me. Aaron with forming stories, like we ended up writing a lot. Playing with Wrath, I mean, they had experienced loss as well, so they were always more than welcoming and more than comforting for me. Just jamming with them, playing their style of music and their songs, like it really helped get a lot of that negative energy out and allowed me to bring a lot more positive energy in. I'm in the best shape I've been in my life right now. I'm back to being a vegetarian. I have started a new career at Yelp, which I absolutely love. I now drum full time for Wrath, as I had mentioned earlier, which has been an amazing journey so far. Aaron and I are currently writing now, so it's like a complete 180. Advice I have, I mean, everyone's case is always going to be different. Um, Vent, talk. It's hard to do because I don't think I felt like people would understand, nor did they want to hear it. But that wasn't the case at all. Everyone I talked to was more than willing to listen. Everyone wanted me to talk to them. They wanted to help me. Just vent. Like, reach out to people you love. Do what I did. Reach out to people that I hadn't talked to in years. They had seen some of my posts, and even though we hadn't hung out and talked, I asked if I could call them. The only thing they replied with was their phone number. So reach out, speak to as many people as you can that you're comfortable with. Even if you have a small circle of people you're comfortable with, talk to them. They will be there for you. If you guys are that close, they will drop what they're doing and they will be there for you. That personally made me feel better about most of it. Like, that was a big factor. And then find your hobby, your skill, whatever you like to do, whatever it is, do that. Invest time into it. Do it by yourself if you need. Just keep your mind busy. That's the biggest piece of advice, is just to keep this guy always going and always on something, but something positive, obviously, something progressive for you. Just anything that's going to make you feel like a better person. So, develop new habits. Talk to strangers if you want. Just ask people, like, hey, how's your day going? It's really, really weird at first, but you would be surprised how many people just light up like, it's going great, thanks. Like, it's a weird thing I started doing, but just evolve. That's what we're here on this planet to do, and just make the best of it, and make sure you're always progressing.